Perfect.
There we go.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Dirty 30, QBRs in 30 minutes. I am Marnie Stockman of Lifecycle Insights, and with me, we have Alex Farling. So thanks for joining us. So we started this with, I've got a screen up of haunting tales of QBRs. So this is what we've heard in the space. They take too long to prep. We don't know what to say. Which reports should we be using? And how do we show value? So that's the problem that we have heard. It's one of those things where we know for a fact everybody should be doing them, but there are some barriers in place that are keeping folks from doing them. So we wanted to shine a light on the problem and really how we come to a solution. So I wanted Alex, who is not just one of our co-founders, but was an MSP and is really the thought leader behind why Lifecycle Insights solves these problems of getting to a QBR faster, and not just any QBR, but the right QBR for your clients. So Alex, tell them a little bit about how we came to be, if you would.
Yeah. So I owned an MSP in Delaware, and we had the typical MSP problems. We had a bunch of data crammed into a PSA system and into a documentation system, and some of it out here in some other tools, some other ancillary tools here and there, and RMM and all that. And every time we'd go to meet with a customer, I'd have to pull multiple spreadsheets out, try and stitch them together somehow, or cobble them together and make something that I could put in front of my customer that didn't look terrible. And at the end of the day, what we were doing was following bad advice that said, hey, since you work from home now, or since you work remotely now, you need to go have QBRs with your customers to justify your existence. And ultimately, I think that was the one thing that was said to us early on that just sent us down the wrong path on the quarterly business review. And then we got all that same pushback from our customers that was, I don't want to come to this meeting. All you're going to do is come try and sell me something, or, you're going to talk about boring things that I don't care about. And what we learned was we had to pivot, and we had to have a conversation that talked about our customer and their business and where they were going, instead of about, how many tickets we had closed and how many spams we had anti-spammed and how many viruses we had antivirused, because all they hear is flux capacitor, blah, 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 and they don't care. So we had to make it about them, but we also had to make it faster and easier, because I was spending, I think the first day that you and I talked about this, I had spent 6 or 7 hours, maybe more, cobbling together one for my largest customer at the time, who, when I got done with the output, it wasn't even pretty, because I'm just not an Excel guy.
What?
Right. Go figure. A sales guy that sucks with Excel, whatever. But that was the problem, and that was where the angle we came at it from. And my big frustration was there was a sign literally right here over my desk at my MSP that said, if you have to do it twice, automate it. And QBRs were completely manual, and that was the big killer.
And that is really how we came to be. Is we had a conversation around what is important at a QBR and what can be automated to bring supporting evidence to the QBR. So we really want to talk about the QBR your client deserves. And I promise we're well aware of the clock. You'll get out by 1:30 and we'll still build the QBR in time. So don't panic. Like, there's 6 minutes into a 30-minute QBR. It's okay. We have a plan.
There's a plan.
So, and we're also going to give you, I'll put in the chat, the QBR your client deserves, so you can see a sample of what it looks like if you built this in Lifecycle Insights. So as Alex just talked about, we really want to talk strategy in a QBR. And so Alex, you start with assessment, right?
Yeah. The assessment gives you your status quo. If you're not doing a risk assessment, and every security standard out there, every compliance requirement out there starts with a risk assessment. HIPAA calls it an SRA. We call it a risk assessment. There's a million names for it. But if you don't do that initial assessment, you don't know where you're starting from. So you don't know what your risks are, and you don't know what you need to fix. So to me, the assessment is status quo. It tells me where we're starting. It tells me a lot about just what my client's environment looks like today. And it tells me what work we have ahead of us.
Perfect. I'm going to show my screen again, and then let's talk through what that looks like inside Lifecycle Insights. So am I sharing our dashboard, Alex?
You are.
Perfect. So here's the dashboard of Lifecycle Insights. I will tell you this right out of the gate, that one of the things you would need to do for us to be able to automate these reportings would be an integration with either ConnectWise Manage, Datto Autotask, Halo, PSA, Synchro, or IT Glue, because that's where we get the basis of the information. But we really want to talk about what the assessment would look like. So if Alex has previously gone in and loaded an assessment, and in Zoom, because I was just in our other site, this is going to take a hot second to build. And I'm going to go in and check out and see what Alex has scored inside of our assessment. So we've got an assessment event for this particular client. And we do like to be very clear. This assessment is something you take time on. So you can build our reports in under 3 minutes if you're just aiming to click on and build reports. The assessment is something that needs to be done manually. It's not an agent on a machine that magically captures these, because these assessment questions are aligned to the strategic value of what the technology brings to the client's business. Is that a fair way to say that, Alex?
It is, but we want to point out too that it's customizable, right? I see a good number of MSPs on this call. I promise you, no two of them have better than 50% overlap in their stack.
Yeah.
Even ones that belong to the same peer group and have all the same friends and like all the same vendors have a very differing stack, have a very different best practices requirements. So the goal here is that we give you some place to start, and you can customize this and make it your own, and really give your customer an assessment that says, not only are you following all of the industry's best practices and are you doing things to keep you safe and secure, but you're using the right products that align with our engineers and their training and their skill sets for us to deploy them properly, keep you safe, and troubleshoot them quickly and responsively when you have a problem. So there's two components to that. And part of why this is manual is because we can't automate identifying a stack when we don't know what your stack is. But we can accommodate just about any stack. And the other thing is this is something that can be delegated too. The smartest guy in the room doesn't have to be the one giving this business review when we've got everything built properly and really, poured into the platform. It can be scalable. It can be delegated work.
So with that, you can see part of Lifecycle Insights is the color reporting, red, yellow, green, stoplight reporting, where red is bad, green is good. So I can go score my client. I can add public comments, private comments. If I've done this assessment before, I could look and see what I had previously scored and said like, oh, it was red last time. They weren't doing an asset inventory. Maybe at this time, they had worked on doing it manually, and we've decided, okay, we're going with Lifecycle Insights. We're gonna automate that and do it easily for them. So you can, you run through your scoring. You can have scoring instructions. So to Alex's point, if you have interns that could potentially score some of these items, and you can attach documentation to keep that consistent, you can add the scoring instructions here. Or if you have a whole team that does these and you want to keep them very consistent, being able to link your own instructions here, as well as your explanation and remediation tips. How would you always, in your company, what would you recommend if this were red for you? So when you go through, and we'll assume that Alex has done his assessment as he promised us, I'm going to download that so you can see definitely one of our two most popular reports, and typically the ones that our partners use to start their business review, their QBR. So of course they go in with an agenda first, but after that beginning opening piece, they really want to speak to the assessment. And you can see in the assessment on the left-hand side that it's very obvious the first row is red. That is our hardware score. And if the client said, why are we red in hardware? I can see that that's an area we need to address. The next page over has all of the items around hardware so that you can really dive in and see where you're at risk and what you need to do to increase that score. The back of the report, oddly enough, the appendix is probably the next most popular part of the report, as this shows you all of the at-risk items across all of your categories, a summary of that, and then the comments. So this is where you've put any of the recommendations that you've added, any of the comments, concerns. That is where this gets pulled. So at this point, the conversation comes down to which of these are priorities for your business and how can we make this happen?
Well, and this is the piece that establishes that status quo. So this is where we live today with all this risk. Mr. Customer, what would you like to do about all of this risk that you have? That's the conversation we're going to have for the next 45 minutes in our QBR.
So if you were building this QBR and you have the assessment, you want to come up with some recommendations for them to take to the business review. So this happens inside our analytics page, where just a little sneak peek that's not even part of building the business review is I could do a comparison and say, okay, if I do this work and then come back next time, you will see that your score of 48 is going to move to a 73. So in the land of what have you done for me lately, if you did that assessment twice and showed them how you would score it after the projects you're about to recommend, you would really be able to show the difference you're going to make in their technology health that supports their strategic plans. So I'm going to click on link to recommendation at the top, and I'm going to go in and select some items. And if I want to address these by creating this recommendation, you'll see that it pops my assessment items to our recommendation sheet, and I can add assets. So this is where I can say, so this is the piece that is automated. So this is why Lifecycle Insights is fast, is because we've pulled all of this from your PSA. We've done warranty lookups for Dell, Lenovo, HP, Microsoft Surface, Cisco, Meraki, and SmartNet. So we have a good sense of where your warranties are expiring, where your assets are at end of life, and we can add these assets to the recommendation. So now that we have the recommendation, we can add labor, material, replacement costs, a recurring costs, etc., to the project. We can save that. I'm not going to save it because we probably have plenty of projects recommended for this particular client.
Yeah, there's a few of them in there.
Yeah, one or two. So you can see that when I've saved a recommendation, I now have a whole catalog and a roadmap of the projects and recommendations that I would like to talk to the customer about, help them prioritize and align to work for the next quarter, the next few quarters, etc.
Yep.
So step one was to score the assessment. And then now it's the analysis, right? This is the strategic piece of, based on your priorities and pain points, what can we do to address your technology needs? From that, they're looking at the project. They really want to see long-term. What does it look like? Because believe me, CEOs don't like to see red. They want their technology health to go to green. So they're probably way more curious about what else they will need to do in the future and what this is going to cost them long term. And that drives you to the budget forecast. So the budget forecast in Lifecycle Insights is automated by pulling over information from your asset list and your contracts, as well as your recommendations. So I'm going to come over here to reporting options just to show you what I could have done with this budget. I can do a yearly, monthly, quarterly budget up to 12 periods. And I can grab specific categories. So if I only wanted to look at contracts, if I only wanted to look at projects, or maybe we're just doing a refresh around workstations and servers, etc., I can take a look. And we do both a detail view that I could really drill in and talk to the customer about exactly what we have planned based on end of life. So things end up on the budget forecast one of three ways: the assets at end of life, the contracts or subscriptions are renewed at that date, or projects have been slated for this particular quarter. And you can certainly move these pieces around, but that is where you land in the budget. So this is the detail view. And then we also have a spreadsheet budget view that will really, when you switch this to yearly, to be able to give a 5-year budget forecast where they're normally spending $20,000 with you a year. And then all of a sudden in 2 years, when a server comes due, there's another large expense. It's no longer a conversation of, first, you're not blindsiding them with a new expense. And it's not a conversation
no surprises.
of if you are going to have this technology expense, it's when, and then we can talk about how and what that's going to look like, right? That's a strategic conversation. A sales conversation is you walking in today and saying, hey, we're going to bill you for a new server. A strategic conversation is, in 2 years, you'll have a server come due.
Yeah.
Let's talk
And
about what that looks like.
it just changes the game to be able to go to your customer. My favorite view of any report is our 1-page budget forecast, which is 5 years on 1 page, no detail. Just show them the summary and let them see that ebb and flow of their technology spend, and be able to point out 2 or 3 years in advance, hey, Mr. Customer, you're going to spend $20,000 more in 2024 than you did in the 3 years leading up to it. How are you going to handle that? And if you have that conversation early and often, when you knock on the door in 2024, it's no longer surprise, Windows 7's dead, I need 20 grand. It's, hey, this is the year we've been preparing for.
Yep.
Can we still tackle all these things? Have you been stashing money away? Did we set ourselves up for leasing or hardware as a service or something else that puts us in a good place? Going in without a budget, or going in with a budget that only reflects the line items that you manage for an MSP for your customer, sets you up to fail. If you notice, we track contracts and subscriptions so you can bring them all their third-party technology expenses. So I know when the bill for that expensive EHR solution comes due. I know when the bill for Salesforce comes due, and when they have other large expenses, and we're still planning our stuff around that. That is so key to turning this into a consultation instead of a sales pitch.
And so the piece that Alex just brought up there is the next part I wanted to talk about. That what we've just shown, the assessment and the budget, are the two strategic conversations you have along the way. Everything else is really supporting documentation, although the next most strategic piece is the contract piece. Because you can see here, our demo site's hooked up to manage, but we can import your contracts from Autotask or ConnectWise, and so you get to import the contracts that are associated with this client, but you can also manually add contracts that are not part of what the services you provide. So if they are using a VoIP provider that is not your preferred VoIP provider, you could see in here when that contract would be expiring if you've had this conversation with them, so that you could maybe go and suggest that they take a look at your VoIP provider. So if you're having that 6-year budget conversation and then show them, okay, well, these are my best guesses at what you're paying for your internet service provider, your VoIP provider, printer copier services, et cetera. If you want to fill out more pieces on this budget moving forward, right? Share that information here and we'll make sure to provide it in your technology budget. Then all of a sudden, you're not the only line item on the budget you're bringing to the table either, right? And so that really gives you a consultative, strategic partnership with your client as opposed to them thinking of you as sales. So we highly recommend bringing the contract piece. As a matter of fact, when you print it out, if you want to add extra lines, that is easily done. All of our reports download into Word for that very editing reason.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to lay that out and go, hey, Mr. Customer, here's the things I know about. What other technology expenses do you have? And scribble something in there that you can go back and request more information later, get an eye on a contract, and complete this data.
Exactly. The other pieces we would recommend to bring for supporting documentation would be your asset list. And the asset list, you might want to build a couple of different ways. So in Lifecycle Insights, lots of ways to get information here. But let's just say I want to take a look at all of my devices that are expiring in terms of warranty. So I've mentioned before, red, yellow, green, blue reporting. So the blue is if we don't have data. But I want to see where my warranties are expired, but my assets are not at end of life. So my assets are yellow or green. So this is called swatching in Lifecycle Insights, where I can turn on or off a color. And so here I can see I've got 12 machines where the warranties have expired. And for these who are very healthy and the end of life is no time soon, I probably want to go out and get a manufacturer warranty. Versus maybe I've got a couple months left on a couple devices and I'm willing to throw the dice and say, okay, I don't need a warranty for 2 months. If it dies today, we'll go ahead and replace the machine a little bit early. So you might have a couple of views that you want to present to them, maybe all devices that are expiring in a certain time period, et cetera. Or for sure, if you've got a slew of Windows 7 machines, you're going to want to put them onto an asset list. And then the other piece that we really, especially now in the world of all of the cyber security liability insurance conversations and requirements, you really need to have a conversation around user licenses, especially those that maybe have lapsed and haven't been open for 6 months and who's got access to those licenses. So we also integrate with Microsoft 365 so that you can say, why do I have folks who are not in my PSA that are in Microsoft? And why haven't they logged in 6 months? We need to do a review to see if we need to, if maybe we're spending too much money on licenses, or someone is spending too much money on licenses, and really are there security exposures because of that? Again, that report will print out to Word. But the other piece of this is that that's pretty much the documentation, along with potentially an executive summary that, and maybe a couple other ancillary documents that you would want to add to a business review. So the big goal of Lifecycle Insights from the beginning was we really wanted it to be easy for you to just create your entire business review in one place, stack the components that you're interested in so it follows your process. We never believe that a platform should mandate the process, but that it should support your process. So you can see here, the whole purpose of Report Builder is for you to create basically an easy button that says, I always want my business reviews to look like this. And when I build it with these components, do this for this customer, now do it for the next customer. So you can see all of the components that we allow you to build with. And then we have built one that's Alex's favorite template, that starts with his agenda, which you'll see in the QBR that I'll put in the chat, along with the assessment summary, right? We talked about that already. We have the 5-year budget forecast, the 6-year budget forecast, the project summary, 6 quarter, sorry. Alex's executive summary, where we've taken some screenshots from, our dashboard as to what they need to see. And the beauty of this, and why we really claim that you can be QBR ready if you've done the back end work quickly, is you can either download this to Word, or this is ready to go for a presentation. So we have presentation mode so that there's no more cutting and pasting into PowerPoints, because that is exhausting and tedious and doesn't feel like important work. Although we really need to be able to present to our clients. So you can see that now I can scroll through the whole business review, but it's still dynamic, so that if I had questions when I got to the budget forecast and they said, what are those 8 workstations I'm replacing in January through December next year? You can open that and drill into your report. So you have all of the supporting documentation along the way. That's really powerful in having those strategic conversations. So we promised 30 minutes, but we talked for 10, and it's now 1:25.
Well, in fairness, you haven't clicked the print button yet, so you've got obligations here.
Okay.
Right.
And click print. Yeah, that's fair. Also click print. So if you have a slow loading printer, it might take another minute.
So we save, what you're saying is we have 5 minutes left for people to put this on their binder and put a nice pretty cover on it and get it ready to go out to the client. Because that's how I delivered them at my MSP. And you can see that this is the report that we're going to have you guys download at the end of this. A little binder, little cover pages, little black back pages, just those little details. You spend $100 on Amazon to buy the what do you call the binding machine,
yeah,
to do those. Yeah. And it really gives you that extra professional presentation when you go to meet with your client.
So I am actually putting the link to that in the chat right now. So please go download that. If you want to take a look at what the report printouts look like, you can add your own logo, etc. And if you have questions for us, throw them in the chat. We have 4 extra minutes. Is there back end work, like you have to respond to the assessment? Absolutely. Do you have to clean up your data? For sure. We give you dashboard insights into where you're missing your data. So we do make the data cleanup easier. And our clients tell us that the first one takes their longest period of time, but now we have clients that are prepping in, Raj, I know, starts from start to finish is 90 minutes from the moment he decides to sit down and start taking his assessment to putting the QBR out the door. But once you have all the data, as you can tell, it doesn't take long to build the reports, but the thinking about what strategic conversation you want to have at the meeting is the part that is important. And so do not dismiss the need to take time just because there are places that you can automate because it's the strategic value that you're
Yeah.
bringing to the party that's important.
Well, and I think the point is, we want to forklift as much of your existing DNA into this platform as possible. So, we give you that report builder where you can put things in the right order. You can insert components that are straight out of Word or things that you built yourself to keep the talking points that your customers are used to hearing. But at the end of the day, what we're looking for is to help you make this process more strategic, more customer centric, more customer focused, and something that you can iterate on over time. Because most MSPs, because they don't do it the same way twice, because it's so manual, they don't really have a standardized process to iterate on and make better. And if you use a tool like this to provide you those guide rails to standardize it, then you can iterate on it over time, continue to improve it, do a little better every time. And before you know it, you have a real VCIO process or a real account management process that delivers value to your customers. And, at the end of the day, what this is about is don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Get good out the door and work on it every day or every QBR, every quarter, or whatever. If you're not doing them quarterly, just call them business reviews, strategic business reviews, cybersecurity business reviews, whatever you want to call it, but work on them regularly, continue to iterate and improve on them, and you'll wind up with something that you're proud to deliver to your customers. But if you never get started, if you let perfect be the enemy of good, you'll never get them out the door, and this work will never get done. And consequently, you'll leave money on the table with your clients.
Oh, you know what? Thank you, Nick, because I sent that to all of the panelists only. All right, here's the link. Please click on that link now. And then I also just put in, if you're curious about what our pricing looks like, here we are. So our basic plan, most folks just give us a trial. It's free for 30 days. So if you're interested in, jumping in and seeing what this looks like, what your data looks like, we'd love to get you going on a free trial and see if it might be something that works for you. So I just put the link to the pricing page as well. So yeah, take a look. We have 1 minute left. We'll stay on for that 1 minute to answer any questions. And we'd be excited to help you get your QBRs where you want them to be and deliver the QBR
Absolutely.
your clients deserve. Thank you so much for attending today. We know everybody's busy, but we also knew we could get you in and out in 30 minutes. So.
All righty. I think we're good. We don't have any questions laying in the queue. So everybody enjoy your day. You got 30 seconds back in your life.
Perfect. Have a
Perfect
good one
timing.
all. Thank you.